Today, I am delighted to welcome Greg Bennick to the show. Greg knows about focus. Through reading about his life, wouldn't know that though. He's a best-selling author, a keynote thought leader, a noted rare coin researcher, a TEDx speaker and speaking coach, a humanitarian philanthropist, and an influencer devoted to transforming the world by inspiring personal and social change. And for the last 3 decades, he's traveled the world listening to people and what they want and need. He's come to realize that people want to matter. They want to feel that they matter. They want to be part of something meaningful, and that's how he helps organisations and individuals get that and get that feeling of mattering. Greg, thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you so much. It's funny. The audio, I think, is either you said humanitarian or it came across as humanitarian, not humanitarian. But I kind of like that idea. I like the idea of being a humanitarian and approaching life with humility. Although a humanitarian and doing work in Haiti is kind of more officially it. Humanitarian. I think we've created a new word here, and I kind of like that. How do we approach our life and our work with a bit of humility, lack of ego, amidst a world where people are driven by ego? I'm going to go with that. Humanitarian. I like it.
That's fair enough. Yeah, you'll find typos in all of my speech. There you go.
Good. We coined a new term here. You've heard it here first, people. Humanitarian. Approach the world with humility. Thanks and good night. This is great.
We'll get a book written, get it out there quick.
Absolutely. Let's go.
So, Greg, tell us a little bit more. Obviously, a little bit of detail, and you just mentioned Haiti there as well. Tell us a little bit about you, bit of your background, family, maybe where you grew up, where you're from, that sort of stuff.
So, I grew up in an interesting family where my parents, my mom switched jobs every 10 years on purpose because she wanted to always challenge herself to live new experiences. So she switched her job every 10 years. My dad, after working in the corporate world for years, decided he wanted to work for himself. Well, that was pretty fascinating because it led to a situation where I was influenced by people who were constantly challenging themselves to do something different and do something better. So when I was coming up and I got involved with performing and speaking and connecting with audiences as a 13-year-old, I decided, you know what, I want to live a life that is engaged as much as possible and varied as much as possible. So, my bio makes me sound like a jack of all trades, master of none. But what I've tried to do is become a jack of all trades, master of as many as I can, which is all consuming. That means, of course, I don't have kids because I couldn't have time for them, right? But I've done a number of things. So I started out actually as a juggler when I was 13 years old and immediately realized that I could impact audiences in the corporate realm and associations and whatnot by juggling and tying in customized ideas to what they were interested in and entertaining people with messaging. So that was cool. I started doing that when I was 13, 14, 15 years old. And then over the course of my life, as some of the things you've talked about in the bio have been true, I am indeed a rare coin researcher and writer. I write for 4 different publications about rare coins. The Haiti tie-in is that I have a nonprofit that does development work in Haiti. I work for Haitian people on building houses, providing clean water systems, and helping farmers plant crops. There's a number of different things which have come up over the years, but I make my primary living as a keynote speaker and coach and trainer in the corporate and association market around the idea of creating space for possibility through improving our focus and basically where we put our energy.
Brilliant. So obviously, I started talking earlier before we started recording, while we sorted out the sound, and I mentioned the thing that sort of sparked my interest in reading your bio, and then when we connected, was around that element of focus. And a little plug for myself, my little book that I battered out at. My first chapter in this book is called Notifications. After the introduction, is called Notifications, and it begins with, I've got one simple piece of advice when it comes to notifications: turn the bloody things off. So that was, so you can see where focus and how to make room for focus for us is something that is of interest to me. now in improving my productivity. And then for years now, my mobile phone, it's an answer machine rather than a tool that tells me stuff. It doesn't. I turned off all the clicks and beeps and bops. Microsoft Outlook, the first thing I do when I get a new installation of that is turn off all the notifications except for meetings, because those are needed. But all the other stuff that just makes me go, "Ooh, my boss sent me an email. Oh, I wonder what that's about." And then I go and look at it and it says, "Oh, has anyone taken the teaspoons from the kitchen?" It's something that important. And those are the sort of things that I know just eke at our productivity as in work and in life and at home and all those sort of things. So that's immediately your focus drew me to that. So I really like to talk about you've obviously got your book Reclaim the Moment, that, but what made you sort of like get into this particular part of productivity, because it's multifaceted, isn't it?
Sure. So the book, as it were, Reclaim the Moment, 7 Strategies to Build a Better Now, also talks about the idea of distractions, certainly, and the way you've described it, the way that, oh, my boss texted, oh, this happened, we're thrown all over the place. I realized that I was being thrown all over the place as well. And I was in a conversation with a friend of mine who's a futurist. We were on Zoom. We were talking about the future and the future of work, the future of cities. And at one point, I sort of exasperatedly said, I don't want to be a futurist. I just want to build a better now. This is probably 4 years ago or so. I just want to build a better now. And the second I said it, we both went, oh, wow, that's really good. And that became my tagline. If you want to build a better future, build a better now. And I put it on my website and started exploring the idea more and realized this is what I've been talking about for years, just in different forms, not with that specific intention. So the book actually came about in an unusual way. A friend of mine who I'd met years before got a job at Wiley, who are a major publisher, and reached out to me, having seen that tagline now on my website, and said, hey, I saw this tagline on your website. Do you want to submit a book proposal around this Build a Better Now idea? I thought she was kidding at first, but she was completely serious. So this book was the result of me having a friend who worked at a publisher who thought it would be a good book title, and the publisher agreed. It was never like I wanted to write a book and I worked so hard to get it published. I actually just thought of ideas that came to me organically, and then somebody published them. It's a miracle, basically, is what it is. So it came to me in a very unusual way. I go to a lot of speaking conventions where people walk around and they try to ask each other, how did you get your book published? How did you get a book contract? That sort of thing. And I explained to them, I met my friend because I was at her house 6 years ago and we were waiting to go out to dinner. And all of her kids were running around her house, and I started teaching her kids how to juggle to pass the time. And she asked me about myself, and I explained, oh, I'm interested in writing. The point is, when people ask me, how do you get a book contract? I say, well, you teach some kids how to juggle, and then you wait 6 years, and then a major publisher offers you a book contract. That's how it works. It's simple. Try it.
It happens all the time, doesn't it?
Happens all the time. That's exactly how this book came to be. And I could sit here and feed you a line and say, I'm so brilliant that my ideas couldn't be ignored by the publishing world. No, it's actually that I taught some kids how to juggle, and then the right person at the right time paid attention to the right idea, and here we are.
It's brilliant. There's I heard a story on a writing podcast. Interesting enough, was they were interviewing a guy who's I can't remember the name of the film. I always forget it. It wasn't great, the film, but the book that was written was the guy who wrote it. They were interviewing him, and he just got this major film with Mark Wahlberg in it. You know what I mean? It was decent. It's gone really well for him. It was a novel. But one of the things he's done is put in the back of it or the front, I can't remember which, basically saying, if this book gets given to a Hollywood producer and someone produces the film, if you can prove to me you're the person who did it, we'll give you 50 up to whatever £1,000 or something. So please, if you know someone, please hand it. And it was apparently, I can't remember, it was somewhere in Asia or in the Indian subcontinent that someone was in a hotel there where someone had this book and it had been left, and someone had picked it up in that read it and read that bit, and they were a person who was involved in show creation and things like that. And it's kind of like a lot of serendipity to get there. And that's a lot of things are like that, aren't they?
Well, you know what? I think you've given me a good idea. So I have a number of copies of my book, and I travel a lot. I think I'm going to start leaving them not in airport or not in hotel rooms or in airports and stuff, but in bookstores. I think I'm going to start putting my book literally in bookstores. If I don't see it in an airport bookstore, I think I might just put it on the shelf and see who grabs it and tries to buy it, or I might leave it somewhere. I like that idea, that serendipity creating idea. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. It was. When I heard that, and it was just they took a punt on it for a laugh, really, and they never thought
Yeah.
anything would come in it, and it did, and that's a really good idea, and it also what I think it was the part of the premise was to hand this book to other people. If you enjoy it, hand it to other people as well, and let someone else have it. So again, rather the kind of the opposite to a lot of the publishing industry, where it would be like it says at the bit, you can't loan, lend, or gift this book without written permission from someone's grandma's grandma's grandma or something like that. So, so obviously you that book idea came there, the Build a Better Now. What was it that kind of led you from juggling and helping people and doing that, and kind of um, leading to this sort of corporate career that you've got, and your speaking and all that sort of stuff. What was it that moved you that way into that?
Yeah.
Because I
Well,
imagine kind of doing some of the juggling, teaching juggling. I've seen these sort of things in corporate events, but it was kind of. It sounds like you've taken it out more than just a little bit of entertainment. It's taken it
yeah,
more
for
forward as an
sure.
art.
Yeah, a step further for sure. Well, it started when I was a kid, when I was about 15 years old. I'm going to tell a fun story that's a backstory bit, and then we'll get into the answer to your question. But I'm 15 years old. I'm walking around a party, a company party, in the town where I grew up in the northeastern part of the United States. And it was a party for a company called Remington. Remington was a shaver company. They were owned at the time by a guy named Victor Kayam. And Kayam,
Remember
you
Victor's
remember him?
adverts?
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So his advertisements, he was on the advertisements. He would hold up a razor, like I'm holding up this pen, and he would say, Remington, I like this shaver so much, I bought the company.
Yeah.
Okay. Kayam was a monster of a guy in terms of his immense scope of his business. You know, he was a hugely successful businessman. He went on to own the New England Patriots football team. And the point is, I'm 15 years old. I'm walking around this event. I'm juggling 3 juggling balls at a Remington event. All of a sudden, a hush falls over the crowd. And it's not because I'm the best juggler in the world, but I look over my shoulder. Victor Kayam has walked into the event, at the Remington event, and he's surrounded by these bodyguards and handlers. He walks up to me, I'm juggling, and he says, Hey, juggler, let me see those juggling balls. I hand him the juggling balls. He takes the juggling balls and he does this rudimentary juggle, and all of his bodyguards go, and everyone in the audience claps. He hands the juggling balls back to me and he says, Hey, those are really nice juggling balls. I take the 3 juggling balls, I hold them up next to me, and I say, Why, thank you. I like these juggling balls so much, I bought the company. Okay. No one laughed. And then Victor Kayam laughed. And then
Yeah.
everyone laughed. And it was a moment where I said, Oh, I see. If I tie the juggling into things that are meaningful to people, that's a really strong way to connect, right? Because, everyone then after that was all about the juggler. They thought I was the greatest thing in the world. Okay, fast forward 30 years. So here we are. And when I'm on stage with Build a Better Now, the reason that I love the idea and the reason that it resonates is because I'm always tying it in to entertainment and trying to tie it into the group that I'm with, just like I did when I was a kid with Victor Kayam. So I'm there on stage. Maybe I'm talking about taking risks because it's important for this company to use innovation, and their people are learning about innovation. And instead of just talking about taking risks, I start juggling a machete. Well, you're going to gather the attention of the audience if you're juggling a knife and talking about taking risks. So tying those things together is something that I learned when I was a kid, and that's why I take that to the next level with the juggling, the ideas, the entertainment, the customization, all of it serves its purpose of communicating more effectively.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah. I think that's making me think with the juggling a machete. I might try and do that next time I have a risk review,
Do it.
just with my project
Absolutely.
team to see
Yeah.
what
I mean,
happened there.
I highly
I'm
recommend
not very
bringing
good
a
at
machete
juggling,
into
so
your into your risk review.
Yeah, it would be quite interesting. I'm not sure if that pass the within my organisation whether it would work. I get the point. Yeah, it's bringing stuff to life, isn't it? And there's an emotional connection to those sort of things that then, whether it's positive, negative, it embeds a memory and embeds that learning much better than and I think I've read on your website there, you're saying, was it just a PowerPoint slide talking about risks and stuff? And it's kind of like, yeah, it's a bit dull. It's not that enthralling. Most people are sleeping through that. Whereas if you can give that little bit of, that just connecting to something else. So yeah, the teamwork type things and things. I remember we were doing a thing about teamwork where they had a choir. So they had a team and they turned us into a choir, but used it as about the variations and how to build it up and build up as a team and stuff. And it was good, really enjoyable and really entertaining. None of us can sing particularly well, but we, as a group, we created a really nice sound all together. And I think that's kind of where that learning was to be able to bring that forward.
Nice.
So when you talk about focus, when you talk about reclaiming the moment and building a better now, what are the things that from what you've seen and what you've done, what are the things that people or organisations, because I think there's an organisational thought about this as well. Or say talk about as the individual, say my listeners around how building a better now, reclaiming that moment can help them. Why bother, sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I'm going to answer in terms of the chapters of the book, not because I'm pitching the book, but because that's really where the ideas are codified. But we live in a world of constant distractions. We all know that. We live in a world where we give away our attention and our energy freely. Well, that's an immense problem because it limits our possibility. When I'm so focused on the bings and the bops, as you said, of my phone, or I'm so focused on what everybody else is doing, I'm limiting my own potential. I'm limiting my own ability to connect with other people. So the world and the media often convince us that the world is challenging and impossible and hard to navigate. And unless we put our attention in the powers that be, we're never going to be able to do what we need to do to get through. Well, I believe a little bit more in people taking responsibility for themselves. So the book chapter titles come into play here. The first chapter of the book is Believe in the Possibility of Kindness to Escape the Trap of Pessimism. That's a way to create possibility. If I walk into this interaction with you and I think to myself, this guy is going to be intense with me. He's not going to ask good questions. This interview probably won't go well. I don't think I should be on that. What am I doing here? I've just limited the potential of our conversation. I've limited the potential of everything that could come with it. But if I believe in the possibility that you're a kind-hearted soul and that I am, and that we're going to have a good conversation, all of a sudden, the pessimism is erased and we create space for possibility here. The second chapter, Keep Your Eyes on the Knife, is a juggling metaphor. If you're juggling two beanbags and a knife, where are you going to keep your focus? I hope it's going to be on the knife, right? So with that in mind, what's your knife? What's the thing that is mission critical for you to keep your focus and attention on? That way, when the world encroaches on you, you don't give away your attention to that because you know where your attention's supposed to be. So things like that help us reclaim this moment so that we can step into the possibilities that we want. There's a chapter called Leap into the Dark, and the tagline is to embrace the possibility of success. We fear failure all the time, but I think that in my life, I often fear success. What happens if I get everything I want? Then I don't get to be as relaxed anymore. I have to engage with that new level I've achieved. So leap into the dark. It's an invitation to give it a shot. Leap into the dark and embrace the possibility of success and see what happens when we give something a try that otherwise we would have limited ourselves about. So all of those chapters, those chapter titles, as you can imagine, bring people to a point where this moment is better. I mean, this is just a better moment because I believe in the possibility of kindness. I'm leaping into the dark saying, let's do this. I've got my eyes on the knife. I'm not thinking to myself, okay, what's this pen going to offer me today? I'm focused on you. When we do that and reclaim this moment from the distractions of the world, we absolutely build a better now, and that lets us create the future that we want.
Brilliant. It's immediately that again the knife seems to be drawing my attention, and I don't know why. But yeah, that and thinking about me as a project manager. And projects I'm running a number of projects at the moment, and it's so easy to just go dun, 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 divide your attention. But there's always a problem child, as a kind of I don't like that term actually, but I use it. But you know what I mean, a difficult project that needs more attention, that is going to cause more escalation, and sometimes you don't deal with that one, partly by avoidance, but partly because you've just got the noise of all the others, and being able to, as you say, that thinking of them as the literally spinning plates scenario with the, I use all the time with the project management role. You are spinning lots of plates. You're just keeping something going, and there's always one about to fall. If it's a little plate, it doesn't really matter. But if it's the big plate that's got all the whatever, mixing up my metaphors now, that's the one you've got to look at, isn't it? And you've got to look at it. You've got to look at that machete. You've got to look at the big plate and make sure. How do you do that? Because it's really easy to be dealing with, in quotes, admin stuff that doesn't actually move things forward, stuff that doesn't actually matter, but is there. It's filing all of your emails. It's making, doing all these things that you're going to do that actually aren't important. What sort of things do you suggest to people to get that focus on that machete?
Yeah, I think that realistically we often deal with a fear of missing out, in that if we don't file the emails on time, we're going to miss out on something. That's probably not true. If we don't do this thing that seems so mission critical right now, we're going to fail. It's probably not true. I think that we can apply more time to the things that genuinely matter to us than we think. I know that for me, like for example, today I'm working on some new video material for myself. Well, I also need to be doing this. I could go on. I could list them all to you. It doesn't make a difference. None of them have to be done today. Meaning, I think they do. They feel like they do. Some of them are deadline based, but realistically, the video is the knife. The video is what matters most. So even if I take 10% of the time that I would have put into all the other things and put that into the proverbial knife, that video today, the video is going to get done. So it's about prioritizing. And when we sit, especially with an organization, and think to ourselves, what matters most? Then all of a sudden we get to say, okay, what matters least? Emails can be filed away later. But what needs to happen now is that we think, what happens if we lose sight of that knife? Well, the knife could impale us. It could land in the audience, whatever. I mean, what's the mission critical task, the do or die task, the thing that really matters most? It becomes easier when we think that way to decide what we're going to put our energy into. So for me, I think about what's the knife, not just what needs my focus, but what is really the mission critical task? What is really the thing that if it falls or fails, does the most damage or has the most impact? And that's where I put my energy. Because at the end of the day, you could file emails for the rest of your life. Literally, you could file emails for the rest of your life. And you're not gonna get any further along. You're gonna be an expert email filer. Hallelujah. You don't want that on your tombstone someday. I don't want it on anybody's tombstone. I would much rather say, this guy didn't file any of his emails. I can't even believe it. But here's the things that he did accomplish when he wasn't filing these silly emails. So there's ways around the clutter. We just have to make determined choices about what deserves our energy and attention most.
I think the word that you use there, which for me is critical, is choice. Again, I'm going to refer back to some of the stuff. One of my favourite songs and bands is Rush. There is a
best.
Exactly. There's a line: if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. And that's an amazing lyric, but also from this point of view, and I mention it that kind of thing in my book around the fact that emails is the one that's bugbear. Like, you get emails, you get them sent, you read them, or your notifications, whatever, and you're giving your attention to someone else. They haven't chosen to do that, but because you let them decide, you actually, it's your fault. It's not theirs. And I had a great story from a guest on here, Andy, from Codebreak, who talked about he was on a Friday with his family having dinner one evening, and they were out having a night out, and about 7 o'clock or whatever, one of his clients rang him. He answered the phone. And he said, yeah, how you doing? I'm just out with the family now. I'm just having some dinner. He said, well, you answered the phone. And he chose to answer the phone. He said, you shouldn't have answered the phone then. Sorry, it's all right. It's not important now, but you shouldn't have answered the phone if your focus was on the family. It taught him a massive lesson. And
it's
again,
a choice.
Yeah, it's easy. And that's what I say. I mentioned to you before, my phone is on silent 90% of the time, unless I know I've got a family member calling me or someone, a doctor, or I know I'm expecting a call, but then it's on. Otherwise, it's on mute all the time. And 90% of the time, again, you sat with it in front of your face, scrolling, doom scrolling occasionally. So that isn't a perfect thing. But that if I'll be at work and I'll sit there, or I'll be in this office, the phone will be behind me, and I'll work for 3-4 hours and I've not looked at the phone. And there's a list of potential notifications that I haven't switched off that would have pinged at me, would have diverted me, and I would have given away that time and that energy and that focus to someone else.
That's exactly right. And it comes down to a choice. And I have to say that you having Rush as your favorite band is so meaningful because, and I'm looking for the quote that I used in my book, but there's a Rush quote in my book. I just can't remember what page it's on. Rush being my favorite band of all time. I'll have to find it. But yeah, there's Rush is quoted in the book. So there you have it.
Yeah,
I love it.
brilliant. Yeah, it's just, and that just, I remember hearing that years and years and years ago, that lyric, and just, because I love the lyrics, and I love clever lyrics, and I love thoughtful lyrics, and ones that are kind of, philosophical is probably too fancy a word, but maybe you can do that way. And that one has always stood out to me.
Nice.
Around thinking about what I do and whether I choose to go to work, and again, my episodely mention of Manager Tools, the podcast, where they've they've always talking about the fact that, or one thing that Mark's talking about, someone said, I wish I was playing golf instead of at work. And he said, well, no, you've made a choice to come to work. You're a grown up. You could choose, there's consequences to go and play golf instead of coming into the office, but you've chosen to come in. So right. Again, we make these choices, and sometimes we don't feel we can make those choices. We can choose not to do a certain task that someone thinks that we should do, or thinks we should be in a meeting. There's consequences where they come and tell you off or have a go at you about it, but you kind of go, well, that wasn't important to me. The delegate to the floor scenario of, there's some administrative stuff where you know someone's going to scream at you because it's important to them. But actually, is it important in the grand scheme of the small finite window that you've got to get stuff done? You kind of make that decision. I've seen people do that, and I look at them, I think, why aren't you just getting on with what the corporate thing should be, or what that should be? And actually, they're making a choice, and they're going, I'm not going to deal with that. And that causes problems for some other people potentially, and those are the consequences. But it's a choice that they're making, and I can see why they do it. And I sometimes think I should do more of it. I was just watched a series called SAS Rogue Heroes, which is about the British secret special air service that was created during the Second World War. And one of the guys in there was a guy called Paddy Mayne, and his job was to create havoc behind lines, and that's what they did. Mm-hmm. And they weren't going to stick to the traditional command and control approach of the army, and they didn't, and they weren't for it. And sometimes you kind of think they've gone, well, what's the important thing here? Well, the important thing here is to wreak havoc. That's where our priorities, that's where our focus is. Mm-hmm. We're not going to go by the book. We're not going to do that. And they're going to, like, rightly or wrongly, on how you think in warfare and things like that. But that attitude of, you know what your focus is, you know what your goal is, you know why you're doing what you're doing, and you're doing those things to make that happen. And I can see that possibility stuff you're talking about before, that opening up possibilities where you go, well, actually, what's important to me? Therefore, I look for those possibilities.
Yeah, this is great. I love the idea of choice. And the Rush quote I used was from a song called Second Nature. Too many rapids keep us sweeping along, too many captains keep on steering us wrong. So I love the fact that Rush has come into our podcast today. And whether
Yeah.
online or offline, I'd love to know what other bands you enjoy and listen to, especially lyrically, because I'm also into lyrics very much, for sure.
Yeah, I'd say there's a British sort of folk punk rock singer, guitar singer called Frank Turner, who I'm about to go and see in about
He's
a
great.
fortnight. He's got one lyric which we used to fit like mittens, but never like gloves, which I thought was a beautiful. From a poetry point of view, and my point, you know exactly what he means.
That's
The
wonderful.
analogy of it,
That's
and
wonderful.
it's so simple. And look, like that rush one there, it's kind of you're carried on by that tide, and you're following people who you shouldn't follow.
Yeah,
And it's just like sometimes you just can sit back and you say, reclaim that moment, reclaim what we're doing, and
absolutely.
reclaim where we're going, because it's so easy in our careers to just follow, not blindly, but it's just it's hard to stop following, if you like, in some ways, and challenge some
For
situations.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. And the artists that we're talking about were certainly unusual artists. So like take Rush, for instance, for listeners who are unfamiliar with their music. I mean, Rush reached a point in their early career, which was a 50-year long career. They reached a point in their career where they put out 3 albums. They released an album called Caress of Steel. The cover of the album came out wrong, meaning that the colors were wrong. They didn't have the money to recreate the colors correctly. They were feeling like they were at the end of their rope. The record label said, "We need you to create an album which is this, and this in order to save your career, or we're going to drop you." They decided to do their own thing. They made a choice, speaking about choice, and they recorded an album called 2112, which was an incredible album, but they wrote an album which was in exact opposition to what the record label wanted. They wrote the record they wanted to write, and they write 2112, and it became an absolute sensation and lasted for the rest of their career as a masterpiece. So, by making choices about what is most important to us, we can lead ourselves in incredible directions. So, I love that we're talking about Rush today. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it reminds me of Rush Day not long ago, wasn't it? And uh, in December that pops up on Facebook and all that. It's all international.
That's
That's
right.
classed as International Rush Day. It's like Lemmy and Motorhead and the 8th of May and all those sort of things, which are all quite fun. I do like all that stuff, and I could spend hours talking music on these sort of things, and just the way the one that struck me again there, sticking to what you believe in and being there that with and how close it is, but the dramatization certainly of it of Queen when they decided to do the Night of the Opera album completely against the will of the record label and the record executive there, violently against it kind of
Yes,
thing, and they
absolutely.
produce something entirely different, and sort of like you said, Bohemian Rhapsody being the sort of number one. I mean, certainly in the UK, when they do top 100 songs, it's almost always, if not always, the number one rock song. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's just awesome.
Yeah,
It's
look at look
interesting.
at
It's just,
look at the artists who have stood out over time. You know, David Bowie, stands out over time because of his uniqueness.
yeah,
And even lesser known but equally, powerful acts, especially from your part of the world. The first 4 Marillion albums are extraordinary. And they're extraordinary. And there's the singer Fish, who's on his final tour dates. I'll actually be attending his last 2 shows in Glasgow, Scotland. Um, these are extraordinary artists because they stood for what they wanted to do. They made choices based on what was most important to them. And sure, they had to play guitars, bass, drums, and do vocals, but they made choices to do those things in unique ways. They made choices to put their energy in unique areas and focus on unique approaches to their art. And as a result, they're legendary. So I think that's an
yeah.
important lesson.
Yeah, I've got two friends who are massive Marillion fans and continue to go to the I think it's Leicester where they annually have a gig there, and Steve Hogarth and all those guys, and they go and see them. So yeah,
Amazing.
they're massive fans, and again that
Fantastic.
Misplaced Childhood album was just epic as far as I was concerned. But I know that obviously that first four albums actually was a small window of Marillion's career, really. When you look at what's there, it's just the popular ones in the 80s.
Yeah,
Yeah, like I said, we could talk about music all day, can't we, about that? But it's a really good point, though, is that uniqueness, that being able to stick with what you've got, and as you say, the people you embrace. Whilst you can be successful by being the same as someone else, by copying what's there, by fitting in with the norm, those people, the Elvises, the Beatles, they stood out from what was there, and all of those kind of people have been copied since. But every time you see someone new and unusual in the music industry, in the acting industry, anything like that, that draws to you, and you've got to have that's kind of, they stick to their own guns. And I think we all there's something in us that attracts us to that, seeing that in people. We may not realize it, but we see that in people where they're walking their own path. They're not following everyone else, and we all want that and sort of strive for that. And that sounds like sort of where you're coming from is to actually help people get into that position, become an owner of their own path, deciding what that route is.
Yeah, I think that's essential, and that's a really good way of wording it, an owner of their own path. And the thing is, that doesn't mean that we need to be anarchistic in the way that we approach life and disregard other people potentially, but instead have almost that that sense of self that allows us to propel ourselves forward based on what's most meaningful to us and include others as well. And I shouldn't say anarchistic because, ultimately we can be, free from the bonds of the world around us in terms of the way it distracts us and not oppress other people. At the same time, we can bring them with us. We can bring our team with us. We can bring, people with us along, on the journey that we're on in terms of exploring new ideas that are most meaningful to us and exploring ideas that are most meaningful to the team. And we can do that together. I think it's possible to build a better now in conjunction with other people and do that as a team. So that's why these ideas work organizationally as well as individually as well.
Well, yeah. Well, thinking organisationally, I think there's an interesting, and then sort of boiling down a little bit to projects and kind of the topic of there as a project manager. What sort of things? And I'm guessing you've worked with project organisations and sort of more traditional organisations, but what kind of things have you seen that those project organisations and project managers, program managers, whatever, PMOs have struggled with and found that you've been able to help them unlock? What sort of things have you seen there?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say that there isn't a consistent, normal response to what people need. Every organization is different. But with that in mind, some of the things that people, come to me with are things like inspiration, or rather motivation, which is rooted in a lack of focus on a vision. And I say that because it's not just generalized, we need to be motivated, we need to be inspired, but rather, yeah, we're losing touch with what we as an organization want to be doing. Or rather they say, hey, can you reinvigorate us around this idea? This is where our core value is right now. So refocusing on core values comes up a lot. I would say too, just in general, people's ability to communicate and work together as a team comes up a lot as well. That people feel too fractured. People feel as though they're unable to maintain their focus as a team. That comes up a lot. So getting people connecting with one another, getting people laughing together, getting people remembering that they're part of a shared vision, and then reminding them what that shared vision is. Those are the things which I would say come up most often. I think that people feeling as though the work they do matters and that they matter is also essential. I've been reading and studying for years around the idea of, self-esteem and how self-esteem ties into all these ideas. And when we feel as though we are valuable contributors to something meaningful, when we feel as though the work that we do matters and that our lives matter and account for something, our self-esteem boost goes up, and all of a sudden we feel as though we want to be more active participants in that world that we've created or helped to create. So that's something I've been speaking about as well to organizations. oftentimes organizations aren't focused on the self-esteem and well-being of their people as much as they should be. But I think that self-esteem ties in really strongly to this. When people start realizing that, when our self-esteem is strong, when we feel as though we matter, when we feel as though we're part of something meaningful, we can be more productive and active. So when people talk about productivity or come to me with issues of productivity, that's the first place I go, is let's make sure people feel as though they matter.
It's really, there's a bunch of things in there, as there always is. Matt, it was in your blurb, and I read it before, didn't I? About um, uh, people feeling like they matter, people feeling like, um, and I've heard the phrase, and I've used the phrase actually, where um, sometimes in organisations you want to feel part of something bigger, and an organisation, in a project, everything, we're all part of something bigger. But sometimes you feel like you're a part in something, which and it's hard to spot the difference, and that's where you get that thing. Well, I'm just a part that can take it out, put someone up. Do you know what I mean? You're just a cog that can be replaced. Whereas when you're part of something, you're integral to it, and you feel ownership, and you feel um, uh, identity from success of that thing that you're in. And that's the thing where I think there's a subtlety there. Is it you're part of something big and really great, and we're doing all this, and everyone sits there, I'm not really invested in that. I don't really give a damn. And you're not part of it. And when you see people who are they're volunteering in something, you'll have dealt with that with your non-profit, where people are volunteering in something and they are absolutely 100% invested in that, and they are part of it. We're Parkrun. I'm sure you're aware of Parkrun in the US, where people will go there, and I've been there, and I feel really part of that community and part of what that is, and I really am invested in it and would defend it. I've been in organisations where I haven't felt like that, where they've been paying me reasonable amount of money to do work, and I haven't felt the same as I would for something where I was volunteering. And it's how you get those sort of things and spot them with your team when people aren't feeling that. How do you what sort of things have you worked with organisations to get people to start feeling part of something rather than part in something? And is it changing the people, or is it changing the organisation?
Well, I mean, changing organizations is challenging, but changing the people, that's easier to do. And getting people connecting with one another, laughing together, getting people engaged with one another, getting people paying attention to one another, getting people to laugh at themselves, getting people to laugh about the struggles that they're facing in their organization. Those are things which I've definitely encountered. There was once where I did a presentation to a tech company, and I was asking the members of the audience, if you had a limitless budget and you could do anything you wanted, what are some of the things that you'd create here at the company? What would you create? And people were coming up with things that were very tame at first. Well, I'd make sure that everyone got their memos on time. I'm like, no, 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 no. Come on. I'm talking about like free pizza for all. I'm talking about like robots that come and massage your feet while serving you a drink in the middle of the day. Like, let's go. Let's get creative. And the things that people came up with were outlandish. Like we'd have a roller coaster in the break room. You know what I mean? Okay, now we're talking. But then some of the things they came up with were outlandish, but actually applicable. Like we would have a system of whatever it might have been for them, right? That, something that worked. So then I started thinking, okay, let's talk now about how to make that thing, which seemed so outlandish 10 minutes ago, a reality. Let's talk about that. And people being engaged in that process of thinking creatively and laughing with one another and engaging with one another around an outlandish idea was a way to bring people together, was a way to bring people back to center and focus and make them remember what was most important for them. I think that getting the people transformed first is the way to change the organization, rather than go in and try to change the organization and having it trickle down or force its way down to people. I think we start with people first, and we're always going to get great results.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. And it's interesting that as you say, they're trying to those outlandish ideas.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they are all based in a frustration or a want that is caricatured as part of that. And when
That's
you
right.
boil it down underneath, there's something real in there, like the roller coaster. Well, the break room's a mess and it looks horrible. Do you know what I mean? That might be what it is. It's that base level. I'm sure you've seen the Ted Lasso show that Apple did, and when Ted went there, the suggestion box, and it was like the shower pressure was crap, and then they'd fix it and no one gets blown away. Really funny. But again, that something like that can undermine your value, undermine how you feel that you matter. If you're in an organization where what you're doing, you need to have a wash, and the facilities for doing that are not great, that doesn't make you feel like you're important to the operation of that organization. So immediately it's tiny, it's paper cuts, isn't it? It's the tiny chinks that bring it all down. It's not the big gestures that organizations have, or projects, or individuals when we're managing people. It's those micro activities. Like, I know there's certain things around microaggressions, but it's consistent behaviors every day that changes people's perception.
Yeah, totally. It's like, if you and I decide we're going to go to the gym, like I've been going to the gym recently, I've lost a few kilos. And how did I do it? What's different this time? Okay. Well, every day I've been watching what I eat, and every day I've been making sure to exercise. Like at some point today, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to do something. I'm not going to go to the gym and try to become Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1983. I'm going to go to the gym. Yeah, I'm going to go to the gym and try to do something, and if I go out to eat with friends, maybe I'll take a little bit home with me and eat it tomorrow instead of eating it all tonight, or the leftovers at midnight. Little tiny things. They're just little things. It's not like I walk around hungry all day long and sore from working out. No, I'll go to the gym. I'll just ride an exercise bike for an hour, or I'll, walk on the treadmill, lift some weights, go swimming for half an hour. But I'll do something that I enjoy each day. And those little bits over time make all the difference in the world. My brother owns a gym in Manhattan, in New York City. And he says all the time that the people that he trains, where he sees the most consistent results, are not the people who come in January 1st with a New Year's resolution and all the money in the world to hire a personal trainer. It's the people who over time come in and keep showing up for a year or two. At the end of the 2 years, the people who keep showing up are going to have the biggest results, not the people who come in like a bat out of hell on January 1st, and by March 15th, they're, back in their old habits, not even March 15th, by January 15th. It's the people who over time, do little bits every single day, and they just stay consistent with it. That's the way to get the results. And I see that that's true as well, with all the people that I work with. When you start to make incremental changes, you see massive results over time.
Yeah, and I suppose it's when you think about changing your focus, changing this reclaiming the moment sort of stuff, is there's that sort of forgiveness bit of it as well, where, and the same with any kind of small program you're going through, like if you're going through your training, or you're going through diet, or going through whatever, you're learning an instrument, trying to get better. Those, sometimes you can do it and you get to the point where, oh, I didn't do it for 3 days. Well, so what? Yeah, give yourself a break.
Who cares?
Start again, reset, and then
right.
and that. Well, I think sometimes, and I've been guilty of this. Is, oh, sod it, I'll get back on the booze. I'll get back on doing that. I'll do whatever it is. Like I just last year, my running was, I have different injuries and things. So varying times of where confidence and run. I started again on Sunday. That was since October that I hadn't run, and I just fell out of the habit of, work was busy. I fell out of the habit. About 2 years ago, I was running 3 days a week. 3 days a week, every time, bang, it was there. It was a priority. And I've let it go. And I've kind of beat myself up about it at different points. And then I'm kind of like, well, no, just. And then this week, I'm thinking, well, I haven't been out yet. And I'm like, well, go out when you can go out, fit it in, gradually build it up, build that consistency. And I think the thing is, sometimes we all think it's like maths, isn't it? We all should know how to do it. We should be able to go, there we are, we've got a habit, we've created it already, we've got a consistent thing happening now, and it's there. And if we can't do it, oh, I'm a failure. And then that just feeds the negatives, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And it's kind of that kindness thing you talk about at the beginning, of kindness to yourself as well,
100%.
as well as
I talk about
going
it.
out
Be
there.
kind to yourself. You got to do it. Got to be kind to yourself. Yeah, if you message me on LinkedIn tomorrow and say, "Hey Greg, I went out last night after our podcast and I ran a marathon," I'm going to say, "I hope you've got a lot of ibuprofen and that you're ready for 3 weeks of recovery." But if you say, "You know what, Greg, I went out last night after our podcast, I ran 1 kilometer down the street and back. That was it. I walked half of it." I'll say, "Great." And then I'm excited to see what you do tomorrow. Same as if I tell you, yeah, I was so inspired. I got on the exercise bike and I rode it for 5 hours. It's like, that's ridiculous. Let's just do a little bit when we can. But the important thing is to have the baseline, have the core be the mission. And I think this is essential because if my baseline is over time, I want to get in better shape. Well, if I go out tonight with friends and I eat 4 large pizzas, yes, that's a mistake. Yes, I should not do that. But the baseline is always going to have me say, that's not what I need to be doing. Tomorrow's going to be different. Then I don't need to beat myself up for the 4 large pizzas. I can get back on track and get back to the baseline tomorrow. Same with exercise. If I miss yesterday, today can be the day. I don't have to beat myself up for it. The baseline means I'm always going to return to that habit and that habit that I've formed because I've got a long-term goal. So I think that's a good way of approaching it.
Yeah, because if you've got, again, we go back to our choices thing, don't we? If we go there, we say, if we'd sit there and go, right, I made a rational choice. I made a choice. Now, whatever that choice is, you might have been weakened, you're choosing by having a couple of beers, and then that made you eat several pizzas. But whatever, you've made a choice. We kind of, and I had a conversation the other day about accountability and taking accountability for things, and not so much taking, yes, it's my fault sort of thing, but actually going, well, no, what I'm looking at there is I made a choice to not go out today and run. Okay, so I'm allowed to make that choice. It's my life. I can choose that. Why should I beat myself up for making a choice that I made then? Now, I know in my head that I'm going down, the Stephen Peters and the chimp mind and all those sort of things that you read about, you've got those multiple inner selves that will there. And you kind of go, hang on a minute, no, I chose to do that. It's fine. And today is the next thing. And I'm choosing to do this today. And that kindness and that choice. I can see it again. I'm coming back to choice because it just resonated quite a lot with me there. And because
Yeah, I
it
like
is
that.
about what you do. You say that, build a better now, reclaim the moment. It's all about what you decide to do with the moment, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I'm just looking at our clock, and we're coming up on nearly 55 minutes. It always goes quickly, these conversations, especially in these topics that I just find fascinating. And I've got your web page up here, and again, music. You've got comments from Andy Hurley from Fallout Boy and things like that, and it's kind of like, yeah, you're kind of like, ooh, yeah. There's some interesting people praising your book. I'm sure that there were things that when you were coming onto the show, you were thinking, ooh, I can have this chat, and these are the sort of things I'd like to chat about, and then we've probably gone down Russian Marillion rabbit holes that we weren't expecting. What sort of thing was there anything that you wanted to cover, or maybe a nugget to give to the team, that if there was one thing that to everyone who's listening, one thing that you'd think, oh, I wish I'd want to say that to them.
Yeah, for sure. There's a chapter in the book called "Develop Relationships That Matter to Outsmart the Dread of Isolation." We are social creatures and we need each other. And we often feel isolated in a world that creates the illusion that we're connected. And granted, social media lets us connect with one another. But ultimately, when we're sitting on a phone or in front of a laptop and somebody is far away, there is a disconnection. And we end up feeling a bit isolated sometimes, even in the midst of the illusion, the spectacle of connection. So I think it's important to go a step further, even if it's electronic, and develop our relationships so that they actually matter. So that was the only thing that I was going to bring up that we didn't talk about so far, amidst talking about all these other great things, was develop relationships that matter, because that outsmarts the dread of isolation. We are social creatures. We don't want to be isolated in the world, so that when we connect with others, it actually is deeply meaningful for us on a psychological level, but it also leads to incredible potential for teamwork, incredible potential for having good conversations, talking about obscure British prog rock. I mean, like, all these different things happen because we want to develop relationships that matter. That's something everyone wants to do. And I think stepping into that space can yield incredible results in terms of our connection and where it leads conversations and where it leads actions. So Other than that, I would just say to folks, go to gregbennick.com. It's GregBennick.com, and get in touch. Tell me what you think of the first 4 Marillion records, the last 4 Rush records, whatever it might be. And let's have conversations about the things we talked about today. That'd be wonderful.
That's brilliant. Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a pleasure. There's about 12 hours worth of music conversations that we could probably have. Never mind talking about getting the best out of focus and things like that. So there's too many topics. But yeah, I've really enjoyed the conversation tonight. So thank you very much, and you have a brilliant rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for listening.
Cheers, Greg. So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links in the way that it's set up, that have kindly allowed me to share their services, really. The first one is Mike Clayton, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's very different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well, if you like. And I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me of that. So if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well. So there's very limited risk on that. So jump on that, and that again, it's nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.